One single step on these rain-slicked granite ledges is all it takes to trigger a 2,000-foot freefall into absolute nothingness. Deep within the ancient mountains of China, a near-vertical sequence of stone notches forces climbers to press their faces against raw stone, gripping rusted iron chains as the sole barrier against an unforgiving void. If you lose your footing here, survival is completely out of the question. Join us and let's discover the scariest stairs in the world. Let's go. Number 13. Peñón del Diablo. Continuous, deafening roars echo through the cloud forests of central Ecuador as the Pastaza River violently crashes down a 260-foot gorge. Directly alongside this massive wall of rushing water lies a terrifying network of stone steps, narrow tunnels, and hanging walkways. The entire structure is perpetually drenched by a heavy, freezing mist that turns the rock smooth and incredibly slick. Walking behind the curtain of water puts you inside a dark, carved cave where a literal liquid wall thunders inches from your face. The metal railings offered along the path provide far more psychological comfort than actual structural safety. And certain sections require gripping wet chains while your boots slide on stone that has been polished smooth by decades of constant spray. Climbing back up this vertical chasm leaves every visitor completely soaking wet, slightly deaf, and hyper-aware of how easily a single misstep on the slick stone could end in disaster. The sheer volume of water creates a chaotic environment where the air itself feels heavy, making it impossible to hear anything but the crushing weight of the river. This constant humidity means the steps never dry, creating a permanent hazard for anyone brave enough to descend into the throat of the waterfall. As the mist clears for a split second, the true drop becomes visible, revealing a boiling pool of foam below that swallows everything in its path. But while the terror here rains down from above, other ancient engineers figured out how to weaponize gravity itself, dragging climbers down into a suffocating geometric trap.
Number 12. Chand Bowery. Plunging 13 stories straight down into the arid earth of Rajasthan, India, an immense inverted pyramid of interlocking masonry challenges anyone who dares to look over the edge. Built in the 9th century by King Chanda to reach the deep water table, this ancient stepwell contains exactly 3,500 narrow steps arranged in a dizzying, perfectly symmetrical pattern across 3 massive walls. The individual stone steps are barely wide enough for a human foot and drop at a sharp, aggressive angle, entirely devoid of handrails or protective barriers. Looking down from the top creates an immediate sensation of vertigo as the repeating V-shaped staircases appear to fold endlessly into themselves before meeting a stagnant pool of green water at the absolute bottom. While the temperature at the base remains noticeably cooler than the scorching surface air, a single stumble on the upper levels means falling directly onto solid stone, not into the water below. The optical illusion created by the shadows and stone geometry has fascinated filmmakers for decades, yet walking the steps remains officially discouraged due to the extreme degradation of the ancient stone edges. The lack of modern safety features forces visitors to stay flat against the back walls, as the center of the structure offers no protection against a fatal plunge. The geometric perfection masks a brutal reality, where thousands of identical steps blur together, leaving the eyes completely disoriented, searching desperately for stable ground before the darkness of the lower levels swallows the light completely.
Only 1% of people know the dark truth behind what we are about to show you next. If you want to be part of the few who actually know what's happening in the world, subscribe and leave a like right now. Done? Look at this. Number 11. Skellig Michael. 7 miles off the wave-battered coast of Ireland, a jagged pyramid of slate and sandstone juts over 700 feet straight out of the volatile North Atlantic Ocean. Perched near the wind-swept summit sits a 1,400-year-old monastery, accessible only by conquering 618 ancient stone steps cut directly into the sheer hillside. These raw stone slabs were fitted together without a single ounce of mortar by 6th century monks and have remained completely exposed to ferocious Atlantic gales and rain for centuries. There are absolutely no barriers, walls, or railings on either side of the path, meaning the seaward edge drops directly into the freezing, crashing ocean hundreds of feet below. The wind at this altitude can become so intense that visitors are routinely ordered to drop to their hands and knees to avoid being blasted off the cliff face entirely. Seabirds wheel through the heavy air at eye level, completely unaffected by the extreme height that causes human legs to shake violently. The stone steps are frequently tilted, uneven, and slick with ocean spray, making the descent an absolute nightmare for anyone prone to vertigo. Standing on these ancient, unprotected slabs provides a clear view of the dark ocean devouring the base of the rock. The sheer isolation of this vertical environment becomes suffocating, reminding every climber that help is hours away if the wind shifts, and that a single massive wave hitting the lower rocks can trap you on the upper peaks indefinitely.
Number 10. Wat Tham Sua. Surrounded by dense tropical jungle in the Krabi province of Thailand, a massive limestone cliff rises 600 meters into a suffocating high-humidity atmosphere. Reaching the sacred summit requires a brutal, near-vertical assault consisting of exactly 1,260 chaotic steps built directly into the rock face. This staircase features no flat resting zones or structural breaks. It is a relentless upward climb where the physical gradient frequently mimics that of a vertical ladder. Massive long-tailed macaque monkeys line the lower handrails, aggressively watching exhausted human climbers and occasionally stealing loose belongings from unsuspecting tourists. The tropical heat forces immediate blinding sweat, while the concrete steps become highly treacherous due to the thick moisture trapped beneath the jungle canopy. At several points, looking up reveals only an endless line of stairs vanishing into the thick green leaves, offering no indication of how much climbing remains. The final 400 steps are notoriously steep, forcing many hikers to abandon walking entirely and scale the structure on all fours while gripping the hot metal rails. Reaching the peak reveals a massive golden Buddha looking over the landscape, contrasting sharply with the physical exhaustion of the climbers who arrive at the top with burning lungs and trembling muscles, only to realize that going down forces the knees to absorb the full, shattering impact of a cliff face that demands total physical submission.
Number 9. Tai Hong Mountain Spiral Stairs. Jutting out from a sheer cliff face in Linzhou, China, a 300-foot steel spiral column twists violently into the sky. This is not a path cut into the stone. It is a freestanding metal corkscrew bolted directly onto the exterior of the Tai Hong Mountains. Climbing this structure is so intensely terrifying that local authorities strictly prohibit anyone over the age of 60 or anyone with heart conditions from even attempting the ascent. The entire tower shakes and humors under the weight of human foot traffic, vibrating aggressively every time the mountain wind rips through the open steel grates. Because the stairs spiral outward over an absolute drop, your peripheral vision is constantly flooded with the terrifying reality of empty space rotating around you. The higher you climb, the more the thin metal structure sways away from the rock, creating a nauseating pendulum effect that triggers immediate motion sickness in many hikers. There are no solid walls to lean against, only a thin, rusted iron railing separating your body from a massive plunge into the valley below. The psychological torture of turning in endless, tight circles while the ground drops further and further away destroys the balance of even experienced climbers. The relentless spinning motion disorients the brain, forcing your hands to grip the cold metal so tightly that your knuckles turn white, terrified that the next gust of wind will tear the entire structure from its anchor points.
Number 8. Tianmen Mountain. Rising 5,000 feet into the heavy atmosphere of Hunan Province, China, a colossal natural archway known as Heaven's Gate punctures through the solid rock of a massive peak. Reaching this terrifying geological portal requires scaling exactly 999 steep, narrow stone steps that ascend in a straight, unforgiving line.
The number was chosen intentionally to represent eternity, but the physical reality of the climb is an agonizing test of human endurance. From the plaza at the base, the staircase appears to tilt directly upward into the sky hole, often swallowing climbers entirely as they enter the massive shadow of the arch. There is absolutely no shade or protection from the elements along the entire path. Summer sun heats the stone to burning temperatures, while winter conditions leave the steps covered in treacherous black ice. The handrails are remarkably low to the ground, offering very little security as the exposure increases exponentially the closer you get to the massive cavernous opening. The sheer repetition of nearly 1,000 identical stone steps induces a strange mental fatigue, making it incredibly easy to misjudge the depth of a step and trip backward. Standing inside the massive rock arch provides a view of the sheer drop below, where the tiny plaza looks like a distant speck, leaving the climber trapped between the freezing stone below and an absolute void above.
A massive 660-foot column of volcanic rock bursts out of the flat green plains of Sri Lanka, forming an impenetrable ancient fortress. Accessing the ruins of the 5th century palace at the summit requires navigating 1,200 steps that are bolted directly into the sheer vertical granite walls. The most terrifying section passes through the Lion's Gate, where 2 colossal carved stone paws flank a dizzying metal staircase that hangs over the open void. The ground drops away entirely on both sides of these narrow metal panels, leaving climbers completely exposed to high-altitude crosswinds that slam against the rock face. In earlier sections of the climb, the path uses steps carved shallowly into the stone, where decades of weathering have rounded the edges and made foot placement highly unstable. Huge swarms of wild wasps nest on the underbelly of the rock overhangs, and signs warn visitors to remain absolutely silent, as loud noises can trigger an aggressive mass attack midway up the cliff. The combination of intense tropical heat, the constant threat of swarming insects, and the sheer vertical drop makes this climb an intense psychological battle. The view from the metal walkways reveals the vast jungle below, emphasizing just how easily a structural failure or a sudden loss of balance would leave nothing but empty air beneath your boots.
Number 6. Jacob's Ladder. Dominating the volcanic cliffs of the remote South Atlantic island of St. Helena, an unbroken line of stone and iron cuts a terrifying path up a sheer incline. This staircase consists of 699 steps that rise in a completely straight line from the capital of Jamestown to the fort above. There are no curves, no landings, and no switchbacks. It is a relentless 40-degree angle that stretches 602 feet high. The physical design means that as you climb, the step directly above you sits at chest height rather than knee height, forcing a brutal, unnatural upward movement that drains energy instantly. The entire staircase is completely exposed to the fierce Atlantic winds, and the low metal handrails offer minimal protection against the massive drop opening up directly behind you. Sailors and visiting military personnel frequently attempt to sprint up the structure as a fitness challenge, often ending up crawling on their hands and knees as their leg muscles fail completely. Looking down from the top reveals the entire town compressed into a narrow valley, with the vast, empty ocean stretching out toward the horizon. The stark isolation of the island amplifies the danger, as a tumble down this endless straight ramp would cause a catastrophic high-velocity fall that would not stop until the body slammed into the coastal rocks below.
Number 5. Floorless Stairs. Climbing along the massive steel pipeline of an abandoned hydroelectric plant in Norway, the longest wooden staircase in the world challenges hikers with a brutal test of raw endurance. Exactly 4,444 wooden steps ascend from the edge of the Lysefjord to a mountain plateau 2,400 feet above. The pressure-treated timber treads are bolted to a basic steel frame that follows the punishing, unyielding angle of the mountain slope.
Many sections of this massive wooden ladder lack adequate side railings, leaving climbers looking directly down at the sheer drop into the freezing fjord waters below. The wooden steps become incredibly slick during frequent Norwegian rainstorms, and the lack of flat rest areas forces hikers to lean heavily against the steep pipeline just to catch their breath. The sheer scale of the climb is immense, offering nearly 3 times the number of steps found in the world's tallest skyscrapers. As you climb higher, the trees thin out, exposing the entire wooden structure to powerful mountain winds that cause the old frames to creak ominously underfoot. The psychological weight of seeing thousands of identical wooden planks stretching upward breaks many hikers mentally long before their legs give out, forcing them to confront the terrifying reality that a single snapped board means an unstoppable slide.
Number 4. Mount Nissen. Running parallel to a historic funicular railway track in the Swiss Alps, the absolute longest staircase on the surface of the Earth rises nearly a mile vertically into the alpine sky. This monolithic structure contains exactly 11,674 service steps built solely for railway maintenance workers. The narrow concrete and steel steps are closed to the general public for 364 days a year due to the extreme danger of the route. The incline matches the severe angle of the mountain railway, creating an incredibly steep climb where a single trip could send a person tumbling down thousands of hard stone surfaces. Once a year, a select group of high-end athletes is permitted to race up the entire staircase, battling extreme altitude changes and freezing mountain air. The steps are incredibly tight, offering barely enough room for a standard running shoe, and feature absolutely no safety nets or modern containment barriers. Looking down from any section reveals an endless, terrifying line of concrete disappearing into the valley below. The sheer physical scale of over 11,000 steps destroys the body completely, creating an environment where total muscle failure is highly probable, trapping runners on a narrow concrete ledge with nowhere to go but down.
Number 3. Huayna Picchu. Rising directly behind the iconic ruins of Machu Picchu in Peru, a steep green pyramid hides an ancient engineering marvel designed over 500 years ago. The Incas carved a treacherous stone staircase into the solid granite face of the peak, culminating in the notorious Stairs of Death. This section consists of near-vertical stone slabs that hang precariously over a 2,000-foot drop to the rushing Urubamba River valley below. The steps are completely exposed to the elements, slick with heavy tropical humidity, and feature absolutely no safety rails or ropes to break a fall. Climbers are forced to use their hands to grip the cold stones above them, effectively turning the staircase into a primitive rock ladder over an open abyss. The high altitude makes breathing exceptionally difficult, increasing the risk of dizziness and loss of balance on the incredibly narrow stone ledges. A single misstep or a sudden gust of wind on this exposed ridge offers zero chance of recovery, as the mountain face falls away vertically on both sides. The ancient stone has been worn completely smooth by centuries of foot traffic and heavy rains, creating a deceptive surface where hiking boots struggle to find traction, turning every step into a calculated gamble against the abyss.
Constructed from the thick wooden ties of a defunct hydro construction railway, a brutal scar cuts a straight, unforgiving path up the side of a mountain in Colorado. The path utilizes over 2,700 individual railroad ties to ascend 2,000 vertical feet in less than a single mile. The average incline hovers around 41%, but the final sections near the summit explode into a terrifying 68% grade. This extreme angle means that looking forward puts your face inches away from the heavy wooden tie above you, creating a suffocating, claustrophobic sensation despite being completely outdoors.
The altitude shifts rapidly, starting at over 6,000 feet and ending near 8,500 feet, which severely limits oxygen intake and causes immediate physical exhaustion. There are no switchbacks or resting platforms to break the vertical line. It is a straight ladder of heavy timber exposed to intense sun and sudden, violent mountain storms. False summits trick the mind into thinking the climb is over, only to reveal another massive wall of wooden ties stretching upward. Descending the ties is strictly prohibited because the angle is far too steep for safe foot placement, forcing hikers to crawl upward as their lungs burn, knowing that looking back over their shoulder induces immediate, paralyzing vertigo.
Washan Heavenly Stairs. Carved directly into the vertical granite face of a sacred peak, a terrifying sequence of stone notches forms the ultimate, uncompromising test of human survival. The Heavenly Stairs consist of 300 near-vertical steps cut into a sheer rock wall, where the climbing angle reaches a staggering 90 degrees. There are no traditional steps or landings here. Instead, climbers must jam their boots into shallow indentations in the raw stone, while gripping heavy, rusted iron chains bolted directly into the granite. The exposure is absolute, with thousands of feet of empty mountain air hanging directly behind your back. Looking down is a physical impossibility, as leaning away from the rock face to look over your shoulder would instantly break your center of gravity and rip your hands from the metal links. The iron chains are old, freezing cold to the touch, and rattle ominously in the high-altitude crosswinds that slam against the rock face. The stone notches have been worn completely smooth by centuries of desperate climbers, meaning your feet must rely entirely on friction against polished granite. This extreme structure forces an intense, agonizing physical struggle, where your life depends entirely on the strength of your arms and your willingness to trust that the next iron anchor will hold your weight.
If you thought this was terrifying, you are not ready for what they found in the video on your screen. Click it right now. The truth is worse than you think.